As I stepped into the courtroom that day, my daughter Dawn shot me a look of exasperation and muttered something curt to her spouse, Dave. But then an astonishing turn unfolded. The judge glanced up, stopped dead in her tracks, and whispered in astonishment, "It's her." The whole room went quiet as a pin drop. Up until that instant, nobody there knew my true identity. That hearing transformed my world completely. I'm Maeve, 69 years old, and just a couple of months back, I led the life of an ordinary grandmother. I'd rise at 6 a.m. each day, pour my coffee into that same worn-out mug from 2 decades ago, and gaze from my modest kitchen window while tending to the African violets my departed husband, Don, cherished deeply. It was a straightforward, routine existence, filled with little habits that brought me solace. For 45 years, I'd been the parent who gave up all for my sole child, Dawn. I labored through night shifts, scrubbing offices, peddled baked goods from my oven on Saturdays, and stitched garments to scrape together extra cash. Everything was so she could attend university and claim the opportunities I'd missed out on. Once she wed Dave, that smug fellow who never uttered a warm word my way, I bit back my resentment and invited them over every Sunday, laying out a proper meal with my warmest grin. I figured after Dawn's death, Dawn and I would bond more tightly. What a foolish hope that turned out to be. Rather than drawing warmth from our time together, she started viewing me as an inconvenience. Her drop-ins turned into dutiful chores, chilly affairs. Her phone calls thinned out, and her reasons for dodging me became ever more inventive. The deepest shame I ever endured hit on a dreary Thursday in October. I'd simmered up the chicken and dumplings she adored, the recipe that demanded hours of effort but always lit up her face back when she was young. I spread my finest cloth, the embroidered one I'd crafted during her teen years, and even picked up new blooms for the table's focal point. When they showed up, Dave barged in like the place was his domain, flopped into Dawn's old recliner, and flicked on the TV without so much as a greeting. Dawn had on that green outfit I'd gifted her, yet her face was as frosty as a winter gale. "Mom, we have to discuss something," she announced in the tone she'd adopted post-marriage, a sound utterly foreign to me. She perched on the seat's front, fidgeting like she couldn't wait to bolt. "Dave and I have decided," she went on while he lounged on the couch, fixated on whatever was playing. "This place is too large for just you. You're struggling to keep up by yourself now. Plus, we require more space once kids enter the picture. We've spotted the ideal senior living spot for folks in your bracket." It felt like the ground vanished under my feet. This was the very home where Dawn had wobbled on her initial steps, where we'd marked all her milestones, where her dad had slipped away grasping my hand, each nook brimmed with our cherished history. Every frame on the walls chronicled our journey. But Dawn, this is our family place. All those keepsakes dwell here, I begged, my words quivering, splintering as they escaped. "Keepsakes live in your soul, Mom, not plastered on surfaces," she shot back with a chill that pierced right through me. "Anyway, that facility offers stuff for seniors like you. It'll suit you fine. You'll get peers to mingle with." Dave grinned smugly, already scanning the space with appraising stares, as if ownership was his for the taking. "It's the right move, Mrs. Maeve," he tacked on with that phony beam I despised. "We'll handle the documents. No stress on your end." My spirit cracked wide open. My flesh and blood, the little one I'd poured my prime, my well-being, and my aspirations into, was evicting me from my sanctuary to hand it over to that loathsome guy. Sobs welled up, but I forced them down. I refused to let them witness my breakdown. "I need a moment to process," I whispered, clinging to my last shreds of composure. "Not much to mull over, Mom," Dawn stated, rising abruptly. "The call's made. Inspectors arrive for valuation next week." And off they went. They abandoned my steaming dish untouched, my blossoms drooping and my soul in ruins across the surface, where we'd shared joyful gatherings long ago. That evening, sleep evaded me entirely. I lingered in the kitchen, eyes locked on the wall's snapshots. Dawn as an infant. Dawn heading to kindergarten. Dawn at her commencement. In each shot, there I stood, cradling her, embracing her, beaming with joy. How did we reach this point? How could the child who'd once dubbed me her champion now discard me like refuse? The ensuing week blurred into horror. Dave hauled in a property evaluator unannounced, a fellow in a dull suit who prowled my home like merchandise up for grabs. He jotted figures, sized up areas, and droned on about prospects and required updates, ignoring my presence outright. Dawn trailed him, agreeing with each slight against our nest. The plumbing's ancient, the evaluator noted, and these floor tiles in the kitchen are way behind the times. I'd need to overhaul the whole setup. My spouse had laid those tiles himself back when Dawn was just 10. Every single one embodied countless hours of labor, affection, and dreams for what lay ahead. Yet to them, they were merely barriers in the path of their fresh start. The shame hit rock bottom the day Dawn showed up with flyers for that senior living spot. "See, Mom, it's got lovely gardens and bingo nights every Tuesday," she chirped in that phony tone she pulled out whenever she was pushing for agreement. "Plus, there's round-the-clock nursing staff. You'll be much more secure." I'd spent 3 decades in this place without so much as an incident. I was on friendly terms with every neighbor. I cherished my daily habits, my garden, my cherished recollections. But none of that registered with Dawn. The only thing that counted was clearing me out of her path. On the least anticipated afternoon, they showed up with paperwork in hand. Dave strode inside like he owned the joint, trailed by Dawn and some fellow who called himself an attorney. "Mrs. Maeve, we've got everything set for the property handover. All that's left is your John Hancock." "Handover," I echoed, utterly baffled. "I figured you planned to put the house on the market." Dawn dodged my eyes. "Actually, Dave and I chose to hold on to it. It's smarter for the family to retain assets like this." That's when it all clicked. It went beyond just evicting me. They aimed to claim my home, the heritage my husband and I had forged through sheer grit. It was theft masked as caring family duty. "No way am I putting my name on that," I declared, summoning every ounce of resolve I had. Dave shot to his feet, his expression twisting into something ugly, unleashing the hostility he'd bottled up back when my husband was around. "Ma'am, you're in no shape to call the shots anymore. Dawn's your sole beneficiary, and she's looking out for your welfare." "This is my home," I shouted, startling even myself with the volume, "and I'm staying put." "Mom, don't complicate things," Dawn whispered, at last displaying a flicker of unease. "You realize living solo isn't sustainable. Remember last week with the gas burner, you left it on. Total fabrication. I'd never once overlooked shutting off the gas, but Dave grinned like he'd struck gold with that fib. "Let's go, Dawn. Your mom's not doing great. It's risky letting her fend for herself." The lawyer coughed awkwardly. "Ma'am, should you refuse to sign of your own accord, we may need to pursue alternative routes legally. Say, a competency evaluation." The room seemed to shrink around me. My flesh and blood was ready to brand me unfit just to snatch my property. The guy I'd welcomed as family was intimidating me right in my sitting room, and there I was, a 69-year-old widow, utterly isolated against their trio. "Give me some space to think," I whispered, feeling utterly broken. "1 week," Dave snapped without warmth. "After that, we'll proceed as necessary." Once they'd gone, I sank into my late husband's favorite chair and sobbed like I hadn't since his burial. I wept for the child I'd lost along the way, for the sanctuary they were ripping away, for the existence unraveling at the seams. Betrayal stung deep, shame burned hot, and helplessness left me raw. That evening, for the first time ever, surrender crossed my mind. Perhaps they had a point. Perhaps at my age I was too frail, too diminished, too irrelevant to resist. Perhaps fading away silently as they urged was the kindest path. Yet deep down, a spark of pride flickered on, unyielding. I wouldn't allow them to crush me without resistance, not after decades of giving my all. Come morning, Dawn returned. Solo. For a split second, optimism swelled in my heart. Could she have second thoughts? Was she here to seek pardon? How mistaken I proved. "Mom, I'm here to assist with the packing," she intoned in that mechanical lilt she'd taken on. "I grabbed some cartons. We should tackle your wardrobe first." I gazed at her, hunting for remnants of the daughter I'd nurtured. Instead, I faced an unfamiliar figure, detached and scheming. "Dawn, think this over. I'm your mom." "That's precisely the reason," she shot back, eyes averted. "I care about you and aim for your good." Care. This was her version of care, yanking away my shelter, my self-respect, every last remnant that defined affection. Over the following hours, Dawn set about boxing up my possessions like they were junk. She grabbed our family snapshots and crammed them into containers without a second glance. She bundled the volumes my husband had gifted me, the fine china from our nuptials, the linens I'd stitched through endless vigils. "This gown's ancient, Mom. Doubt you'll miss it," she remarked, lifting my everyday frock, the very one from my husband's memorial. "Don't touch it," I pleaded. "Just leave it be." Too late. It was already destined for the giveaway pile. My anguish meant nothing. My emotions were irrelevant. I was irrelevant. The breaking point came when she unearthed my trinket case. Nestled within, my matrimonial band, the studs from our 20th milestone gift, and a delicate gold necklace passed down from my own mother. "Better to stash this bling in a bank vault," Dawn declared. She slipped it into her handbag anyway. It might vanish or get swiped amid the chaos of the neighborhood. "Those belong to me," I shouted, lunging to grab the bag from her grip. "Mom, you're really worked up now. This proves you can't manage on your own anymore," she responded in that eerie, composed tone that sent shivers down my spine. Right then it hit me. I'd lost my girl for good. The Dawn I once knew was gone, replaced by this cold stranger, swayed by Dave's influence and clouded by selfishness. That evening, as Dawn departed with my jewels and cherished keepsakes in tow, I remained in my now vacant home all by myself. The stripped walls echoed the emptiness of what remained, showing how effortlessly they'd torn apart decades of my existence. Food wouldn't go down. Sleep evaded me entirely. I slumped on the living room rug, encircled by unpacked crates and strewn relics, pondering how we'd reached this abyss, when exactly I'd faded into irrelevance, when I'd stopped counting. The ensuing days felt like endless torment. Each dawn, Dave arrived to oversee the packing, treating me like someone utterly helpless with her belongings. He ushered in outsiders who inspected, snapped photos of, and valued every inch of my place. They discussed me like I was absent, like some outdated relic slated for clearance. "She needs to hurry this along," the woman noted. Turning to Dawn, Dave added, "The relocation team arrives Monday." It was Friday then. Only 3 days lingered in the house I'd called home for 30 years, the one where I'd nurtured my child, where affection had flowed both ways. "And if I can't wrap up the boxes?" I murmured softly. "No stress, Mom," Dawn shot back, eyes glued to her screen. "The crew will handle it all. Grab just the basics." The basics. As though a whole life's worth could shrink to mere necessities. Later that day, once they'd gone, I drifted through the rooms like a specter. My fingers brushed the surfaces my spouse had coated with fresh paint. I settled into each seat that had hosted our morning meals together. I pulled open every compartment brimming with mementos from bygone eras. In my late husband's writing desk, tucked away, lay faded correspondence, settled invoices, and papers I'd overlooked before. Most held no significance, yet one file stood out, unfamiliar, bearing his monogram and secured with a tiny latch. Eager and frantic for any link to brighter days, I hunted for the key in his typical hiding places. At last, it turned up wedged in a worn volume, holding the spot on a section about assets and real estate. Unfastening the file flipped my reality upside down. Inside were records that puzzled me at first, but one leaped out right away. A testament from merely 6 months prior to his passing, one I'd never encountered. My fingers quivered while scanning the lines. My partner had proven far more visionary than I'd ever guessed. And my sweet Dawn. She remained utterly clueless about the revelation awaiting her. With unsteady grasp, I delved into the testament that promised to reshape my future entirely. My husband, ever discreet on financial matters, had actually been far more active in his later days than I'd realized. The papers unveiled that he wasn't merely the unassuming worker I'd assumed. Over years, he'd steadily funneled spare earnings into ventures. He'd snapped up modest real estate when values dipped. He'd poured funds into firm equities that had ballooned into vast sums, and he'd amassed a treasure trove beyond my boldest fantasies. Yet there was more. The testament explicitly named me as the exclusive beneficiary of it all. Dawn stood to inherit a modest amount only upon my passing, and solely if she'd tended to me with genuine care and honor in my waning days. My husband had outsmarted us both. He detected flaws in Dave that I'd stubbornly ignored. Another provision left me gasping. He held title to the full structure housing Dawn and Dave. Their supposed rental unit, with its monthly fees, was in truth our property. Every resident's lease payments funneled directly to us, wired to an account I'd been oblivious to. With shaky touch, I rifled the stack until locating the financial records. The totals were staggering. For 2 years following his demise, I'd scraped by as a destitute spouse, while riches piled up unseen in the vault. Further shocks awaited. He possessed holdings in Dave's employer, not trivial ones, but a substantial portion granting sway over key choices. Additional stakes spanned eateries, modest enterprises, and even a sprawling plot on the city's edge, now valued at millions. I pored over each form, agreement, and proof repeatedly. It was all meticulously arranged and above board. My husband had erected an unseen dynasty, crowning me its ruler unbeknownst to me. But the deepest jolt came from a private note tucked at the file's close. It was written in my husband's own hand, addressed directly to me. "My beloved Maeve," the note began. "If you're holding this now, it signifies that I've left this world and you've uncovered the gift I hid away for you. Please pardon me for keeping it secret during my lifetime. I intended it as a delightful shock for your later days. You've toiled relentlessly and given up so much for Dawn and me. I aim to guarantee you'd never face hardship." As I pressed on, tears streamed down my face. There's another admission I must make. I never fully placed faith in Dave. Something in his demeanor unsettled me, a drive that raised alarms. That's the reason I arranged matters as I did. Should Dawn honor and cherish you properly, she'll enjoy a secure existence. Yet if she mistreats you or seeks to exploit you, you'll hold the means to safeguard yourself. My spouse had anticipated this very scenario precisely. He'd pierced Dave's facade from the start and fortified my safeguards prior to his passing. Wield this influence thoughtfully, darling, not for vengeance, but for your defense and to impart lessons. At heart, Dawn means well. She's merely misguided. Still, if protection becomes necessary, you now possess the resources. It closed with, "Your eternal devoted husband." There I remained on the living room rug, encircled by paperwork representing fortunes in the millions, weeping for the insightful soul I'd lost and the child I might soon forfeit. Yet after months, these weren't sobs of despair. They were ones of appreciation, optimism, and indeed, a quiet sense of triumph. Dawn and Dave believed they were divesting me of all I had. Little did they know I controlled the structure housing their home, the stakes in his employment firm, and estates scattered across the urban landscape. They assumed they were evicting me from my residence to claim it, unaware that this dwelling ranked as my most trivial asset. Sleep evaded me that evening, but unlike recent weeks' sorrow, my thoughts buzzed with strategy, foresight, and computation. Beyond wealth, my husband had bestowed authority, and I now pondered its application. Monday dawned under a gentle drizzle pattering the panes. Dawn and Dave arrived promptly alongside the relocation crew, anticipating my belongings boxed and departure imminent. Rather, they encountered me poised in my cherished seat, savoring a cup of tea like on an ordinary morn. "Mother, what's this? The team's here," Dawn remarked with her newfound haste. "I've decided to stay," I responded, my composure startling me as much as them. Dave approached bearing that familiar menacing grin. "Mrs. Maeve, we've discussed it. You lack options here." For the first time in ages, I met his gaze unflinchingly. "You're correct, Dave. No options for me, and none for you either." My delivery must have unsettled them as Dawn drew near, face etched with concern. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I'm referring to a fascinating revelation about my assets," I explained, pausing for another tea sip. "Rest assured, clarity will come shortly." They regarded me with the skeptical look they used when dismissing my words as folly. But I was no longer the timid figure from days prior. Strategy formed in my mind, and crucially, I commanded the leverage to act. "Mom, drop the theatrics," Dawn snapped irritably. "The crew awaits with schedules packed." "Send them away then," I said evenly. "Nothing departs these walls." Dave rose sharply. "Ma'am, you misunderstand entirely. This isn't your call anymore." "Quite the reverse, Dave. You're the one in the dark," I countered. I rose gradually from my spot and approached the table bearing select papers from my discovery. Not the full set, merely those essential for our exchange. "Were you aware your residence, the one occupied these past 3 years, hasn't gone to its true proprietor?" Dawn's brow creased. "What on earth?" "We remit payments faithfully monthly," she insisted. "True, but to a leasing firm that funnels funds my way since I hold title to the whole edifice." The ensuing quiet rang profoundly. Dave broke it first with uneasy chuckles. "Absurd. You scrape by on a pitiful retirement stipend." I subsisted that way by design, I noted, relishing their bewilderment. My husband proved far shrewder than we ever grasped. I presented a title certificate. Dawn accepted it with shaky fingers, scanning it repeatedly. Once, twice, thrice. This defies belief," she whispered, "as does your plot to oust me from my home for your gain, except this property is my least prized holding." Dave seized the paper from Dawn's. His complexion drained of color while he scanned the page. This must be a hoax, some kind of fabricated paper. "Feel free to check its authenticity any time," I replied, flashing a grin that had been absent from my face for what felt like ages. "Actually, I urge you to go ahead and confirm it." Dawn slumped onto the couch, as though her strength had vanished beneath her. "Why on earth did you keep this from us all this time? Because even I was in the dark until just 3 days back. Your dad hid it away to shield me. What foresight he possessed." Dave started striding back and forth across the room, visibly upset. "This alters the whole situation, Dawn. If your mom truly holds the deed to the property, she could boot you out at any moment. Plus all the fellow renters who've been shelling out rent punctually for 2 full years. I finished his thought for him. "You wouldn't dare pull that off," Dawn protested, her tone breaking with emotion. "We're blood relatives, after all." Relatives. The term escaped my lips sharper and more resentful than I'd meant it to. The same way you plan to label me unstable just to snatch my home. The same as when you boxed up my cherished keepsakes like worthless junk. The same as when you swiped my late mother's heirlooms. Dawn broke down in sobs. But these weren't the calculated cries she'd mastered over time. These were raw, stemming from true fear. "Mom, I beg you, we can sort this out. It was Dave's scheme from the start." "Dawn," Dave barked, incensed at her pinning it on him. "It's the truth," she pressed on, brushing him off. "He persuaded me it was for your own good. He claimed your mind was slipping, that you were no longer fit to manage on your own. And you bought into that." I questioned, my chest aching anew. "Do you truly know your own mother so poorly that you trusted his word over your gut feeling?" The removal crew, who'd been lingering by the doorway, edged nearer, looking puzzled. "Pardon us, but are we hauling this out or what? We've got another gig lined up in 60 minutes. "No," I stated resolutely. "Not a single item leaves this place. You're free to head out." Dave advanced toward me, unleashing the hostility he'd always concealed. "This isn't finished, you old bat. We'll contest those papers. We'll expose them as phonies." "By all means, proceed," I responded coolly. "While that's underway, I suggest you scrape together some funds for a new roof over your heads, since come the 1st of next month, an eviction order will land in your mailbox." "You can't treat us this way," Dave shouted, his control shattering entirely. "I absolutely can, and I shall, though rest easy. I'll play by the rules and grant the full 30 days required." Dawn sprang up from the cushions in a rush. "Mom, you must see our side. Dave warned that if I failed to talk you into relocating, he'd walk out on me. He insisted he couldn't bear the thought of you isolated here, risking harm to yourself. And that excuses all the ways you mistreated me," I countered. "It excuses discarding me like garbage, rummaging through my life's mementos carelessly, pocketing your grandma's treasures." "I'll return them this instant," Dawn offered frantically, rummaging in her bag. "That's past the point of mattering, Dawn." Dave stepped up once more, but now his demeanor had shifted, not aggressive, but bordering on desperate. "Mrs. Maeve, let's negotiate a deal. Dawn's expecting. Would you honestly cast your future grandkid onto the pavement?" It hit me like a blow to the gut. Dawn was with child, and she'd kept it from me. I was set to become a grandma, only to learn it as leverage. Is this accurate? I directed at Dawn. She dipped her head amid the tears. I hoped to share it more joyfully. I envisioned it as a delightful reveal. Like the thrill of ousting me from my own abode, I shot back, though my determination started to falter. Yet I recalled my husband's guidance from his note. Not for vengeance, but to safeguard yourself and impart lessons. Dawn had to grasp the consequences, and her little one merited upbringing free from the twisted principles Dave was instilling. The pregnancy revelation threw me off balance briefly, but then the flood of anguish they'd inflicted resurfaced. An infant couldn't wipe away the degradation, the disdain, or the endless torment of recent months. "Well done on the pregnancy, Dawn," I remarked, forcing a steady voice. "Yet it alters nothing about your actions against me." "Mom, reconsider for the baby's sake," Dawn implored. "Do you want them raised without ever meeting their Nana?" "Your Nana has been right here the whole time," I pointed out. "You chose to erase me from the picture." Dave attempted one final ploy. "Mrs. Maeve, if you've got the wealth you claim, why not support us rather than retaliate? We could form a cohesive family unit." I met his gaze with the scorn he merited. A cohesive unit, akin to when you plotted to deem me incompetent or when you poisoned my daughter against me. I never. Quiet, Dave. I cut him short with a command I never realized I held. "I've endured plenty of your deceptions." The crew had departed by then, leaving the air thick with strain throughout the home. Dawn wept without a sound. Dave prowled like a trapped beast, while I experienced an odd serenity for the first time in ages. "Listen closely. This is how it stands," I declared. "You've got 30 days to find another place to stay. In the meantime, I don't want you hanging around here except for a genuine crisis." "And afterward?" Dawn inquired, her tone fractured. "We'll then decide if you've grasped anything about honor and family ties," Dave burst out. "This is nothing but emotional coercion. You're wielding your wealth to control us." Coercion. The term drew a harsh chuckle from me. "Just like when you exploited my alleged mental fragility to bend me to your will. Just like when you leveraged my daughter's affection to pressure me." "It's not the same," Dave muttered. But even he didn't seem to buy his own words any longer. "You're correct," I conceded. "The difference is that I truly possess the authority I'm exercising." Dawn rose from the couch with deliberate, unhurried steps. Is there some way we could persuade you to reconsider?" "Absolutely," I answered promptly, though I doubt Dave would ever agree to it. "What exactly?" she pressed, grasping at that sliver of possibility. "I demand a genuine apology for every indignity you've inflicted on me. I need you to confess that you regarded me as worthless, and I require Dave to own up that the entire scheme was his brainchild." Dave's features flushed crimson with fury. "I'll never debase myself before you. Suit yourself and prepare to relocate," I stated plainly. Dawn gazed at him beseechingly. "Dave, I beg you. This is my mom. She's your mother-in-law. We could set aside our egos for the sake of our baby." "Absolutely not," he bellowed. "I refuse to grovel before this scheming crone." The slur lingered in the room like a sharp strike. Dawn's jaw dropped, at last viewing her spouse without the filter of unquestioning devotion. "Scheming crone," I echoed quietly. "Fascinating. So that's your true opinion of me, Dave?" "No," Dawn whispered, but the reins had already slipped. "Yes, it is," he insisted. "A resentful elderly woman who resents her child's joy. That's why she fabricated this entire tale about the funds. Fabricated." I approached the desk and retrieved additional records. Did I invent these financial records? Did I forge these ownership titles? Did I concoct these investment papers? I laid each one on the dining table sequentially until it was overwhelmed by undeniable evidence of my wealth. Dawn stepped forward and started scrutinizing the documents with shaky fingers. "Oh God, Mom, this is legitimate. All of it is authentic." "Indeed it is," I affirmed. "And now you comprehend why your spouse is so eager to undermine my credibility." Dave made a final, desperate play. "Dawn, you can't possibly accept that your mom concealed this for years. She's deceptive." "Nuff," Dawn erupted unexpectedly, startling everyone. "Cease, Dave, just cease." She faced me, tears cascading down her face. "Mom, pardon me. Pardon me for it all. You were spot on. I discarded you like refuse. I stole your recollections, your treasures, your self-respect. And the cruelest truth is that I let him persuade me you were a liability." "Dawn, ignore her," Dave attempted. But she dismissed him entirely. "He poisoned my mind with falsehoods about your stability, about the risks of you residing solo. He burdened me with shame for abandoning you here, when you only craved your own space." "Dawn, hold your tongue," Dave commanded, but the damage was done. "Never order me to silence again," she shouted at him. "I'm done with your deceptions, done with you exploiting me to wound my mother." The ensuing quiet was profound. After years of compliance, Dawn had at last championed a principle she held dear, rather than subserviently obeying her husband's dictates. Dave regarded her with an icy detachment that sent shivers through me. "If you side with your mother against me, Dawn, our marriage ends here." Dawn froze briefly, absorbing the threat. Then, astonishingly, she composed herself and met his gaze squarely. "In that case, it's finished," she declared in a tone utterly unfamiliar from her. Dave seemed rooted in place, as if unable to process her words. For so long he'd dictated her choices, her beliefs, her actions. And now, she'd finally asserted, "No." "You don't mean that," he stammered with a shaky grin. "Dawn, you're expecting. You can't manage parenthood by yourself." "I won't be on my own," Dawn responded, turning to me for the first time in ages with a glimmer of affection. "My mother is here." Yet I couldn't absolve so readily. The endured months of shame, the tearful evenings, the ache of estrangement from my sole child, they didn't evaporate with mere utterances. "Dawn," I murmured gently, "I value that you've awakened to the reality, but this scarcely mends the wounds inflicted." Her expression crumpled. "Mom, I implore you. I recognize I haven't earned absolution, but I'll go to any lengths." Dave, sensing his grip slipping, shifted tactics abruptly. He dropped to his knees before me, wearing an expression of remorse I recognized as insincere. "Mrs. Maeve, you speak truth. The blame rests entirely with me. I led Dawn to believe you were incapable of self-care. I pushed her toward those harsh choices. Please grant me mercy." I peered down at him, experiencing a blend of triumph and disdain. Disgust washed over me as I watched him grovel after all those months of his smug superiority. "You're begging for mercy now, Dave, now that you've realized I'm not the frail, defenseless senior you imagined me to be. I was completely mistaken." He pressed on with that familiar act I recognized all too well. "Allow me to compensate for it. We could form a joyful household again. A joyful household," I echoed incredulously. "The kind where you plotted to have me labeled as mentally unfit. That was an error on my part. The kind where you branded me a scheming crone just moments earlier." Dave gulped noticeably, grasping that each syllable he'd uttered was boomeranging back at him. I was distraught. I had no idea what came out of my mouth. "No," I stated resolutely. "You were fully aware of your words. You were finally revealing your authentic self." I shifted my gaze to Dawn, who observed the confrontation with an expression blending embarrassment and sorrow. "And you, Dawn, for ages you dismissed me as a bother. Do you believe a simple sorry wipes away all of that?" "No," she conceded, her tone breaking. "I realize I can't undo my actions, but I can strive to repair the damage." "How exactly?" Dawn glanced at Dave, still on his knees with a desperate plea in his eyes. Then her eyes met mine. "By walking away from him," she declared at last, "by abandoning this individual who persuaded me to turn against the one soul who's always cherished me without conditions." Dave rose to his feet suddenly. "You must be joking. You're carrying my baby." "I'm carrying my baby," Dawn countered with a resolve that swelled my chest with pride amid the chaos. "A baby. I refuse to let him mature under a father's influence of deceit and cruelty toward his own grandmother." "Dawn, you're committing the gravest error imaginable," Dave warned. "The gravest error of my existence was tying the knot with you," she shot back. Dave glared at us both, eyes burning with outright malice. "This matter isn't settled. I'll battle for custody of my offspring. I'll demonstrate that you're both unhinged." "And what funds will you use for that fight?" I inquired evenly. "Since come morning, I'll be chatting with your superior. Were you aware I hold sufficient stock in your firm to sway hiring and firing?" Dave's complexion drained of all color. "You wouldn't go that far." "After everything you've inflicted on me, absolutely I would." "That's wielding authority improperly," he grumbled, "much like how you exploited my mother's affection to control me, much like how you breached Dawn's faith to alienate her from me." Dave made for the exit but paused just shy of it. "This concludes nothing," he spat, his words dripping poison. "I'll ruin you both." "Give it your best shot," I responded steadily, "but do so elsewhere, as you've got precisely 1 hour to clear your belongings from my property." 1 hour? You mentioned 30 days. That applied when Dawn stood by you. With her now independent, there's no justification for you to remain on my premises. Dave banged the door shut as he left, sending vibrations through the entire home. Dawn and I found ourselves solitary for the first time in ages, enveloped in a thick quietude and paperwork that underscored a truth still tough to absorb. "Mom," Dawn uttered softly after an extended pause. "Could you possibly forgive me?" I regarded her, this 30-year-old who'd just uncovered the deception she'd endured, who'd forsaken her own parent for a man of no value, who now carried a child with no partner by her side. "I'm not sure, Dawn," I answered truthfully. "You wounded me deeply." "I understand," she breathed, "and I'll dedicate my remaining years to atoning for it." "Beginning how?" "She began by returning your mother's heirlooms," she explained, retrieving the little pouch she'd swiped days prior, "and by requesting permission to remain here this evening. I truly have no other refuge. I examined the pouch containing my mother's treasures. Then I studied my expectant, solitary child, and a sliver of tenderness stirred within my heart. Just one night, I conceded eventually. But come tomorrow, we'll discuss the steps you'll take to regain my confidence. Dawn dipped her head, grateful tears streaming along her face. Thank you, Mom. I swear I'll set everything straight. Yet I recognized that vows flowed freely but proved challenging to uphold. The true challenge lay ahead in the ensuing days. The following days unfolded oddly and strained. Dawn occupied her former bedroom, which I'd preserved unchanged since her wedding. By daylight, we navigated the space like courteous acquaintances, limiting exchanges to essentials: meals, the forecast, her bouts of nausea. Yet I observed closely every motion, every phrase, every effort she exerted to reclaim my faith, and what emerged sparked optimism in me. For the first time in ages, my girl handled her responsibilities solo, without relying on others to fix them. She cleaned her plates right after meals, maintained her space impeccably, and even pitched in with household tasks unprompted. On the third day, while I tended to my violets near the window, Dawn drew near, bearing a mug of tea. "Mom, might we converse?" I assented without facing her. I'd come to see that quiet held more sway than endless speech. I've reflected deeply over these recent days. It started when she settled into the armchair that Dave once occupied like a monarch. She opened up about all that had unfolded, the choices I made and the words I uttered. I kept tending to my garden, just biding my time. I've come to see that Dave wasn't the only one who transformed me. I permitted it. I opted to trust his words over listening to my own instincts. At last, I faced her directly. Dark shadows ringed her eyes, and she appeared even more frail, even with the early swell of her pregnancy. It was obvious sleep had eluded her. "What do you believe caused that?" I inquired. Dawn let out a heavy breath. "It was simpler to point the finger at you rather than confront the truth. I'd wed the wrong partner." That candid confession caught me off guard. I'd braced for defenses, rationalizations, anything but such a stark acknowledgement. Deep inside, when Dave griped about your frequent visits, I sensed his unfairness. Yet it felt less painful to view you as overbearing than to admit his self-centeredness. She rested her palms on her abdomen, where the bump was just beginning to form. When he proposed shifting you to some senior living facility, I recognized the cruelty, but he persuaded me it was compassionate. I longed to accept that narrative because it spared me from tackling the core issue. And what was that core issue? I pressed, though I already grasped it. I'd bound myself to a man who scorned my kin, who undervalued me, and who would never evolve. Over the ensuing days, Dawn shared details that sent shivers down my spine. How Dave had slowly cut her off from her circle of friends, arguing they dragged her down. How he dictated every dollar she touched, insisting females couldn't manage finances. How he'd talked her into abandoning her career, claiming true spouses poured their energy into domestic life. "You never considered confiding in me?" I questioned her one afternoon. "Dave warned me you'd never get it, that your era was too outdated. He made me believe sharing our troubles would prompt you to urge a split, and he craved no meddling from outsiders in our union." Every disclosure stung deeper than the previous. My girl had endured quietly while I assumed her bliss, and when she'd at last sought reconnection, Dave had already brainwashed her into perceiving me as the foe. 2 weeks post Dave's departure, a phone call drained the color from Dawn's face. "The superintendent," she whispered, her tone shaky. "Dave's downstairs in the entrance. He insists he can come up since he's still my spouse." "And your response?" I said I refused to meet him, but he's digging in. He's threatening to summon the cops, calling it abduction. I rose from my seat with an unexpected steadiness. "Instruct the super to head down. I'll handle this." "Mom, he's volatile. We can't predict his moves." "Precisely," I countered. "That's the reason I must intervene." Upon reaching the foyer, I discovered Dave in a rage, berating the quivering superintendent huddled at his station. "That deranged senior has seized my spouse," Dave bellowed. "Get the authorities here immediately." "Hello, Dave," I greeted calmly. He spun toward me, veins throbbing in his eyes. He'd clearly been indulging in liquor. "Hand over my wife at once." "Dawn's precisely where she's chosen to stay," I stated. "And if you don't vacate this premises right away, I'll summon the law myself." "This ain't yours. You're full of deceit." I pulled out my cell and rang my attorney, switching to speaker. "Ms. Victoria," I said as she picked up. "It's Maeve. There's a distressed fellow here who's balking at exiting my structure. Can you verify my ownership status?" "Absolutely, miss." "Maeve," her crisp tone affirmed. "You hold full title to the edifice at—" Dave fell mute as the verification rang out. The superintendent eyed him with a blend of dread and awkwardness, now grasping the full picture. "Need anything further explained, Dave?" I queried after ending the call. "This ain't finished," he grumbled, his bluster fading. "Indeed," I conceded. "Tomorrow I'll reach your boss at work and the next day the lender on your vehicle. Connections prove handy with ample resources." Dave stormed off wordlessly, yet I sensed his return loomed. Types like him rarely surrender. 2 months on, the courtroom showdown hit like the tempest we'd anticipated. Dave had followed through on his menace, filing charges of child estrangement and monetary coercion, demanding sole guardianship of Dawn's unborn child. That morning, as I donned my finest dark ensemble, Dawn entered my chamber, eyes brimming. "Mom, fear's gripping me," she admitted. "Suppose the judge sides with him. What if he snatches our little one?" I enveloped her in an embrace, the first in ages, sensing her shudders against me. "That won't occur," I vowed. "We've got honesty in our corner." On the right side of things. By the time we pulled up to the courthouse, Dave was waiting there alongside an attorney who must have drained his bank account dry. He shot me that same old glare full of resentment, but this round it didn't faze me one bit. I carried the calm assurance of knowing deep down that I stood for what was just. Dawn and I claimed our seats on the wooden bench. She donned a vibrant purple outfit that accentuated her 5-month bump, while I sported the anniversary earrings from my late husband. We felt ready for whatever came next. Dave's counsel kicked off with his opening, sketching me as a spiteful figure who'd wielded her wealth to shatter a blissful union. He ranted on about coercion, psychological pressure, and an overbearing in-law who refused to let her child spread her wings. Then it was our side's moment. My attorney, Victoria, rose with poise and laid out the proof. Chats where Dave hurled abuse at Dawn. Audio clips of him warning he'd abandon her unless she booted me from our home. Statements from folks next door who'd overheard his outbursts and mistreatment. Yet the real turning point hit when the judge glanced my way and fixed his gaze on me. "Mrs. Maeve Williams?" he questioned, sounding stunned. "That's me, Your Honor," I answered, puzzled by his demeanor. He removed his spectacles and examined me intently. "Were you at family court 3 decades back?" My pulse froze. "Yes, Your Honor, I served as a clerk for Judge Miller." "You assisted me during my internship days, showed me the ropes on filing paperwork, even fetched me coffee on those all-nighters. You were the only one who treated me with decency when others acted like I didn't exist." The room went dead quiet. Dawn stared at me wide-eyed. Dave went ashen, and it seemed like time itself halted. "Your Honor, I'm Judge David Morales," he went on. "Does the name ring a bell?" Suddenly, beneath the silver strands, the lines etched by time, and the gavel's weight, I recognized the timid intern from my office all those years prior. The young fellow I'd stood up for against the teasing from other attorneys. The one I'd boosted when doubt crept in about his potential. "David," I whispered, tears welling up. How could I forget? He broke into a grin, and briefly he transformed back into that hesitant youth seeking a nod of encouragement. "Your compassion stuck with me forever, Mrs. Maeve. You insisted I'd rise to become an outstanding jurist, back when I couldn't see it myself." Dave and his lawyer swapped frantic looks. They realized the game was over before it truly started. "Your Honor," Dave's attorney cut in, "this seems like a clear case of bias." "No such issue here," Judge Morales shot back with conviction. "Just the scales of fairness tipping as they should, and upon examining the facts laid bare, it's evident Mr. Dave Foster is the true puppeteer in this tale." The ruling echoed loud and clear. Dave forfeited any claim to the child and got barred from nearing Dawn or me. Plus, he had to cover court fees and compensate for the pain we'd endured. As we stepped out into the sunlight, Dawn enveloped me in an embrace tighter than any since her childhood days. "Mom, how on earth did you know the judge?" "The world's full of loops, sweetheart," I said, "and good deeds circle back when you least anticipate them." 6 months on, with my granddaughter Serenity entering the world, it all made perfect sense. Every struggle had paid off. Dawn had rediscovered her true self. She'd stepped into motherhood with the warmth I'd always believed she possessed. One sunny afternoon, swaying the little one in our backyard, Dawn posed the query I'd long awaited. "Mom, have you truly let go of the past with me?" I met her eyes. This woman who'd matured leaps and bounds in mere months, who'd come to cherish life's real treasures. "Yes, Dawn, I forgive you," I told her at last, "but the key part is, you've started forgiving yourself." That evening, brewing tea in my worn favorite cup, my thoughts drifted to my husband and his note. I'd harnessed the strength he bequeathed precisely as he'd hoped, not for vengeance but for safeguarding and guiding. Dawn grasped that real affection thrives on mutual regard, not dominance, and I'd come to see that reclaiming your worth knows no deadline. Gazing through the pane at the yard where Serenity played, a smile crossed my face. Certain fights merit the effort, and some triumphs savor sweeter for the wait. Ultimately, I hadn't raised my voice to make my point. I'd simply recalled my core self and upheld it with the quiet strength of one aligned with truth. 5 years post-hearing, my days had veered into uncharted bliss. Tiny Serenity, now a spirited 4-year-old with her mom's sparkling gaze and my unyielding spirit, darted across the lawn in pursuit of fluttering wings as Dawn and I whipped up our weekly family meal. "Nana Maeve, check this out," she called, scampering over with a sunny bloom clutched in her tiny fist. "It's gorgeous, darling," I replied, scooping her into a hug and smooch. "Shall we add it to the bouquet inside?" Dawn beamed at us from the stove. Over those years, she'd truly flourished. In a remarkable manner, she'd returned to education and now held a position as a bookkeeper at a modest yet thriving company. Above all, she'd recaptured that joyful, carefree giggle from her early years. "Mom, there's mail for you," she mentioned, passing me a refined envelope. It originated from the organization I'd founded 2 years earlier, using a portion of my late husband's legacy. The shelter provided safety and self-respect for senior women enduring family violence or neglect. What began as a tribute to my personal ordeal had evolved into a far greater endeavor. "What's inside?" Dawn inquired, wiping her hands on her apron. "They're asking us to the opening of the 3rd facility," I answered, experiencing that profound fulfillment that arises only from realizing your suffering contributed to a positive cause. It will accommodate 15 additional women. Over these years, we'd assisted over 50 women in reconstructing their existence. Some showed up, much like I had, robbed of their self-worth by ungrateful offspring or violent kin. Others arrived solo, family-less, yet carrying parallel tales of desertion and cruelty. The chime of the doorbell broke my reverie. Dawn headed to answer it and returned with an enigmatic grin. "Mom, someone's here to see you." Trailing her was the former Judge David Morales, alongside a graceful lady with graying locks. "Mrs. Maeve," he said, offering that familiar kindly grin from his youth. "Allow me to present my spouse, Elena." "It's a pleasure to know you," Elena remarked, clasping my hands. David has shared countless stories about you. He mentions you as a key influence in his career development." "He's overstating it," I responded, though profoundly touched. "Hardly," David countered. "That's precisely why we're here in person. The Association of Retired Judges plans to honor you with an award for your contributions to the Foundation." "That's truly not required," I started to protest. "It absolutely is," he cut in. "Your journey prompted many of us to contemplate genuine fairness, the type that transcends mere statutes." Once they departed, Dawn and I settled on the veranda as Serenity toyed with her playthings. The yard looked more vibrant than ever. I'd brought on a landscaper, yet I personally tended to the African violets my husband cherished. "Do you realize what I value most in you, Mom?" Dawn questioned abruptly. "What is it?" "That you never turned resentful despite all I caused you. Through all the hurt, you refused to let it toughen your spirit." "Sure, I did harbor bitterness," I confessed. "There were evenings when anger consumed me from within. But your dad shared a crucial insight in his note." "What was that?" "That real strength emerges not from retaliation, but from turning sorrow into aid for those in need." Dawn agreed. Having witnessed that shift in her own life, she currently offered her time at the foundation, drawing on her background to guide young women trapped in harmful partnerships. "Did you ever learn Dave's fate?" she wondered. "My attorney, Victoria, mentioned he'd relocated to another town. Apparently he's wed again." I hesitated, selecting my response thoughtfully. "I hope he gained insight from it all, but truthfully, it doesn't occupy me anymore." "You're not even intrigued?" "No," I said candidly. "I've come to see that certain individuals enter your world solely to impart wisdom. After absorbing it, you release them." Serenity dashed over, her face flushed from frolicking. "Grandma, share the tale of the courageous grandma." It was her go-to narrative, a child-friendly rendition of my experiences. In it, the grandma uncovers enchanted abilities and employs them to shield her loved ones from a fearsome dragon. Once more, I feigned reluctance, but I was already hoisting her onto my knee. "Yes, and remember how the kind judge aids her." As I recounted the tale for the umpteenth time, I reflected on fate's peculiarities. I'd been compelled to forfeit it all to uncover my true possessions. I'd sunk to the depths to unearth my authentic resilience. "And they lived happily ever after," Serenity prompted at the end. "Happily ever after," I affirmed. The valiant grandma secured her joyful conclusion. "You secured your joyful conclusion, Grandma," Serenity declared. I glanced about. Dawn was preparing the dining area for supper. The garden flourished. My lovely granddaughter rested in my embrace, and the note from the foundation heralded support for even more women. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. I certainly did. That evening, after tucking Serenity in, I lounged in my preferred chair with a mug of tea and the regular correspondence from the women we'd supported. A 75-year-old senior expressed gratitude for the bravery to confront her violent son. A 60-year-old shared how she'd reclaimed her home following her grandchildren's attempt to deceive her. Each message reinforced that my trials had fueled a mission larger than my individual anguish. Dawn joined me beside the chair, holding her own steaming cup. "What are you pondering, Mom?" "Regarding your dad," I confessed. "He'd be so thrilled with everything we've created together. I bet he's keeping an eye on us right now," Dawn said softly. "And as for you," I went on, "I'm incredibly proud of the incredible person you've turned into. I got my lessons from the greatest teacher," she responded, grasping my hand gently. We lingered there quietly, soaking in the calm of the evening. Far off, the faint hum of the urban sprawl drifted over. Yet right here, in our backyard oasis, serenity enveloped us. "I adore you, Mom," Dawn said in a hushed tone. "And I cherish you too, sweetheart," I answered. "My love for you has never wavered, not even through the toughest times. And that was the absolute truth. A parent's affection overcomes wounds, letdowns, and acts of disloyalty. It outshines vanity, lasts longer than grudges, and holds more force than any wealth imaginable. That evening, I drifted off into a deep, restful sleep, free from bad dreams or anxieties. I discovered a treasure far surpassing all the riches on earth, the comfort of realizing I'd made the most of my fresh start. Ultimately, it didn't matter how vast my fortune grew or how much influence I'd wielded. What truly counted was turning my suffering into meaning, my shame into resilience, and my trials into guidance for those who follow. I'd grasped the ultimate truth, that it's never too late to advocate for your own worth, never too late to reshape your narrative.